You are tuned in to the MixTape Challenge, the music discovery game show podcast where contestants challenge each other to create a 4-song music mix based on a different theme every episode. This is the first episode of our brand new Season 2. Hopefully all you out there have been looking forward to it since we've had the announcement about a month ago that we were going to be back online, and looking to do about 10 episodes this season or so, maybe a few more if things go really well. So thanks everybody for hanging in there, and looking forward to chatting with all of you again on the social medias after this episode drops. So today's challenge comes to us from the MixTape Challenge Vaults, and we're calling it It's All About the People. Each contestant must create a 4-track music mix of songs that were written about real people and have at least that person's first or last name, or both first and last name, in the title of the song. So, I am your host and contestant, Jeff Hulit. As always, we have 2 contestants here along with me for this challenge, so let's meet them now. First up, he appeared on episode 3 last season and is returning for his second challenge. It's Mr. Craig Cohen. How you doing, Craig?
I'm good, Jeff, and thank you as always for inviting me. This is always a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, very excited about this one. And you up to anything lately? Any projects going on? Any podcasts or anything?
Aside from the occasional Slycast that we put out together, not really. I'm hoping to revamp some stuff, so I don't want to promise anything and then not deliver.
Oh, of course, yeah. But yeah, and we were talking about Slycast and trying to get that on a more frequent cadence. Hopefully we can do that. You know, we got Ramble 5 coming out, and I think Sly's got another escape room movie coming out, so maybe we can get some stuff going on here soon. But so our second contestant is another returning guest from our 4th episode last season. Time travel expert, music collector, Mr. Steve Sikoryak is returning to the show. Welcome back, Steve.
Hey, Jeff. Hey, Craig. Hello, everyone.
Yeah,
great to be back.
Yeah. So what's the update on Paradox Parkway? Anything new since we last talked about it?
So unlike Craig, I do like to promise and not deliver. Still working on that critical pre-planning phase for podcast launch number 1. But the website continues to thrive. Lots of new content every single day. Can't seem to, a day doesn't pass without me hearing about some other TV show episode or movie that's time travel related. So I'm constantly adding to the pile. Nice.
Very, very nice. And have you gotten any new promos this con season?
I did get Robert Wagner, which was great.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. He's in Austin Powers, so that counts for me.
Yeah.
Harry Waters Jr., who is, if you don't recognize that name, he's from Back to the Future. He's Marvin Berry.
Oh, Marvin Berry?
And it was fantastic because he showed up at the con in his tuxedo, including a bandaged hand.
Oh, that's
and he had
great.
a great time. So sorry
that's
for
awesome.
The pauses there.
Oh, no sweat.
Put me on the spot. It's been a while. I have to get back on the circuit.
Yeah. Well, con season is firing up, and seems like there's cons every other weekend, at least all over the country. So I'm sure you'll be jet setting at some point soon, and we'll hear all about it. So before we start the actual challenge, we always do a segment called What's on Loop, asking everybody what they've been listening to lately, what's been stuck in their CD player or their iPod or whatever music device that they listen to. Steve, I know you listen to a lot of music. I see you with your headphones on pretty much every day at work. So what have you been listening to lately?
So while I'm anxiously waiting for the Abbey Road 50th box set, which hasn't been announced, but I'm hoping will happen, I've been enjoying the Red Rose Speedway and Wings Wildlife Paul McCartney solo reissues that came out this year. So I always like the extra tracks and the early demos and things like that. So that's been playing lately. But even better, hope you recognize the name Quinn, as in a Quinn Martin production for those old TV shows like The Fugitive and things like that. They just put out a 2-disc set from LaLa Land Records of the Quinn Martin Collection, Volume 1, Cop and Detective series, where you can listen to those great themes from Barnaby Jones, Dan August, Cannon, and Most Wanted.
Oh, wow.
So, if you're driving around town in your convertible, you're following a lead, tailing a suspect, pulling up to a deserted factory in the middle of the night or crashing into some trash cans on a curb. That's the music they gotta listen to.
Very nice. Good old La Land Records, man. Thank God for them. They put out so much good stuff. I got a lot of La Land releases here myself, so awesome stuff. Craig, what have you been listening to?
Pretty much I got back into a Bob Dylan kick after the excellent Netflix documentary about the Rolling Thunder tour in the 70s. So I've been listening to a lot of the live recordings I have on bootleg from that era, and I look forward to getting the official release.
Very cool.
I had overlooked that era for quite a while, and some of his most exciting performances are from that tour, and he was really in an intense state of mind during that tour. So it's got some of his best vocal deliveries, and I'll argue with anybody about Bob Dylan's merits as a vocalist, but I'm sure that's for another show.
Oh yeah, well we've talked about that between the two of us many times in the past, so I'm sure that'll come up on a future mixtape episode. Maybe we can come up with a theme around hotly contested vocalists.
Oh, one of his songs almost made my mix today.
Oh, wow! All right,
but it did not.
All right. Well, no spoilers yet. No spoilers yet. So I've been stuck listening to David Gilmour, the lead guitarist from Pink Floyd, put out a double live album a while back, and I had some bootlegs from that tour, and I'd listened to some of those shows before, and he put on just a fantastic show, and when the official release came out, I just got totally hooked on it. It's an incredible set list. Who the engineering team who recorded this and mixed and produced this really knew what they were doing. It sounds just phenomenal. So I've been kind of listening to that over and over and over again. It keeps coming up in my my repertoire. So, and also I recently watched a Netflix series, the new Ricky Gervais series called Afterlife, and they weave a lot of music into those episodes of that show. And one of the songs they used to close the last episode was a song by a band called the Thorns, which I'd never listened to before. And I liked it so much, I looked up the band on Apple Music, and I've been listening to a bit of that. They're really, really excellent. So that's kind of where I've been lately musically. So are you guys ready to jump into the challenge?
Right on, yeah.
I am. Let's do it.
All right. Well, let's spin the mixtape challenge wheel to see who's going to go first. And it looks like Steve is going to be up first. So, Steve, what's the title of your mix and a little bit of info about how you pick the songs and maybe what the order you put them in, stuff like that?
So the name of my mix is Tune That Name.
Nice.
I wasn't sure how that was going to play, so I figured I'd give it a shot. It was fun as it was last time to dig into this topic and kind of just see what I can find. I like patterns and things like that, and I had hoped that my mix could hold up, but it unfortunately didn't. I won't share what happened with my master plan. No, I just had to pick different songs, but I enjoyed, like I said, going into the depths here. A lot of things came up, a lot of things fell off the chart, and I'm ready to get to it. So my first song is from 1984, actually recorded in 1983. And it's by the group Madness, their fifth album, Keep Moving. And the song is Michael Caine.
All right. Interesting pick. And what's the reasoning behind this one?
I'm waiting for the audience to roar.
Oh, I guess you'll add that. Applause for that one.
Yeah.
That's the band that did Our House, right?
Yeah.
Our House. Yep. They had a UK band. So I picked it because I just liked the song and I remembered it. And when we were thinking about this topic, it popped into my head. And I said, "Oh, that's a perfect one." So yeah, if you don't know the group Madness, they had a few hits. House of Fun. Yeah, Our House. It Must Be Love. Not a lot in the U.S., but they kind of got a following going. I also like their collection albums because they're all Utter Madness, Total Madness, Divine Madness, things like that. But this particular song, I also like that the band their genre is sophistopop, whatever that is.
They're their own subgenre.
But to have a bonus to it in that Michael Caine actually recorded a vocal track that is played throughout the song. He continues to repeat, "My name is Michael Caine."
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Apparently,
cool.
I've never heard it. Yeah, it's a good song. So he was in a movie called The Ipcris File, a spy movie in the '60s, and the song and the accompanying video kind of follow that pattern. And the backstory in that movie is he was a guy who was being kidnapped and had to continually repeat his name. He was getting brainwashed and he didn't want to lose his sense of being, so he did that. And I think that might have inspired the song. But it's a fun ride. Not a happy song, but a catchy song. And the punchline to this whole thing is that Michael Caine's real name is not Michael Caine. Turns out his real name is Maurice Joseph Micklewhite. Oh. Who's to know that?
Wow, I didn't know that.
But,
wow,
not a good stage name.
But yeah, but definitely check out this band. It's a ska band that kind of morphed over the years, but highly recommended. Michael Caine.
Very well. I'm familiar with the band, of course, but what Craig mentioned earlier with Our House. So I've never listened to that song, so I'm going to have to look that one up and check it out. It sounds pretty cool. All right. So what's your track number 2?
So track number 2 is from 1978, premiered on Saturday Night Live by Steve Martin. I chose King Tut.
Oh my God, Steve, that was almost on my list. I'm so glad that I went in another direction.
That's a great pick.
Well, I have a feeling, Craig, that my number 3 pick is on your list, but we'll get there soon enough. Anyway, novelty song, Steve Martin. He was responding to the big Tutankhamun exhibit that was beginning in New York and actually went across the country, kind of spoofing it. The fact that, they dug up his old stuff and put it on display. And if you remember, some of the ones I mentioned was, if I'd known they'd line up just to see him, I'd trade in all my money and bought me a museum. So from 1978, I remember when that was on. And it actually brought the King Tut exhibit to a lot of people's attention. I don't know if the Saturday Night Live crowd was necessarily likely audience for the museum, but apparently the song and the performance made a difference. So if you ever get a chance to check out that clip, it's fun. And Steve Martin now, is more of a bluegrass recording artist, but he did do a bluegrass version of that song on his 2011 album. But I would recommend the original for the playlist.
Cool.
So
yeah, I remember seeing that Saturday Night Live episode as a kid, and being so amused by the dance kind of number that went with the song, and the kind of the staging and the set that they had set up. It was really funny. So that was those old zany, wacky Steve Martin days. Yeah, and when I was looking this up, it says that sketch was one of the most expensive productions on Saturday Night Live to that point. Steve Martin said, "Hey, I want to do this song," and they said, "Great." And then he was blown away by like, "What are you doing here?" Because they had sarcophagus and guy was painted gold and things. So yeah, it was very elaborate for SNL. Yeah, that's number 2. All right, here's the possible duplicate. This song is by the band NRBQ. Okay, I might have made it past. The song is called Captain Lou, about Captain Lou Albano. Oh, wow.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's great.
Craig, I just assumed that I'm not a wrestling fan. I know you guys are. And I said, he's going to have this. How could he not have this? But anyway, so Captain Lou Albano actually, like Michael Caine, sings on this, performs on this track, if you haven't heard it. But a little bit about NRBQ. So NRBQ is the New Rhythm and Blues Quartet, formed in like 1967, formerly the New Rhythm and Blues Quintet. One guy left. I guess if another guy left, they were in trouble. But NRBQ got to keep that title. They have the nickname of the world's greatest bar band. I'll be honest, I don't really know any of the members, but I just like the sound of the band. It's just a fun band. They do some quirky songs. They'll do things like R.C. Cola and a Moon Pie. Oh, nice. Howard Johnson got his Hojo working, singing about the Howard Johnson's restaurant franchise. Oh, wow. But I didn't know this. Captain Lou Albano was actually their manager for a stint for a couple of years. And while he was their manager, they wrote this song, and there you go.
Wow. Well, I can totally see why you'd think that Craig would have that.
It's catchy. It's representative of, I think it really sounds like them. And I also didn't realize this. Lou Albano is also a buddy with Cyndi Lauper and showed up in a couple of her videos.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. That was the Rock and Wrestling connection.
Yep.
Right. Oh, right. Yep.
Yeah. It totally was. Oh, I was just going to say, for the benefit of the listeners out there, just to expand upon why Steve thought this might be a duplicate. Craig, I don't think you've mentioned on this show before your past podcasting history with Camel Clutch Cinema. If you wanted to quickly fill people in on what that was and why Steve would think that you'd have a wrestling song on your list.
Yeah. And please forgive my birds chirping in the background. They like to podcast as well.
Quite all right.
Camel's Clutch Cinema was my first podcast I ever did with my friend Guy Hutchinson, and we did 80. I think it was like 80 consecutive weekly episodes,
wow.
Which is still something I'm immensely proud of. And each week on the show, we covered a movie that starred a professional wrestler or was about professional wrestling. And yes, nice. We had 80 weeks worth of content. So a lot of fun. All those episodes are still online if you search for Camel Clutch Cinema. And there's some really, really fun episodes. We did They Live with Roddy Piper, the Marine with John Cena. We did an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie. I think we actually did 2 Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, if I recall. No, we did 3 Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, including The Running Man. So you'd be surprised about the amount of professional wrestlers that sort of found their way into Hollywood. And thank you for that, Jeff, because it's still a podcast I'm really proud of, even though we no longer do it.
Yeah, it was a great show, and people out there, and it's just a great connection. So you can hear a little bit of Craig's other podcasting work that is just great stuff. It's a lot of fun, even if you're not a big wrestling fan. It's still a lot of fun to hear about these movies, because you may not realize a movie you've seen had a professional wrestler in it.
Yeah, and we also we recorded a chunk of the later episodes live on location in various Moe's or Taco Bells.
Oh yeah,
around Central New Jersey. So it's kind of cool too to listen to those shows where you sort of just hear us sitting in a booth at a fast food joint talking about movies.
That's pretty awesome. We got some ambiance going on in the background on those. So Steve, back to you. Sorry for the diversion there.
No. Commercial for another podcast is always welcome. So Michael Caine and Captain Lou both have the title character performing on the track. So I frantically searched for others, and I could not find any other guest appearances. So I was disappointed, because that was going to be my gimmick for my 4 choices. But nevertheless, we move on. And so for my last pick, I wanted to come up with a name I hoped that was both obvious and I hoped that neither of you had thought of. So I went for Beethoven.
Oh.
And I went for Rollover Beethoven. And I went for not the Beatles version or the Chuck Berry version, but the Electric Light Orchestra version.
Oh.
And I got to tell you, watching 3 different videos lately of them performing it 2 times in 1973 and 1 time in 2017, they still got it. It's that is a relentless, exhausting, exhilarating performance. So if you see it live, but the Rollover Beethoven story, I was looking that up, and Chuck Berry said that he wrote it in response because his sister was always playing classical music on the piano, and he always was just fighting with her. So that was his response. Rollover Beethoven, a rock classic, often recorded, but Electric Light Orchestra has always been a favorite of mine. And I was thinking about it, so if you watch these videos, they start off looking like it's a classical concert. There's no rock until the violins and the cellos get through their opening, and then they just hit it. The funny thing is, how many groups nowadays are doing that, revisiting their old catalogs? I know Ray Davies did it with the Kinks music. Weird Al Yankovic has a strings attached tour where he's going around with an orchestra now.
Oh,
so.
Geez.
But nothing like being ahead of your time. So
no.
It's a fun ride. I highly recommend seeking out those old videos. And one I found has Richard Pryor introducing them. I don't know what the show is from, but I hit the button and he said, "Hey, it's Electric Light Orchestra." Okay.
Wow.
But it's a fun ride.
All right, so that was your tracks 1 through 4. We're going to recap these all at the end of the show, so don't worry if you don't remember what some of the picks were as we move through the rest of the episode. So, Craig?
Yeah, so my mix is called California Dreamin', and my approach to it was, you might recall, Jeff, that I'll try my darndest to get a certain band into every one of my lists. And thankfully, I was able to instantly come up with the song from that band as my number 4 track on this. And then it was kind of just filling in the blanks and finding songs that worked with it. And after I came up with my second song, I realized that I had a theme and that ultimately all 4 of these songs are somehow related to the state of California. So the 4 songs I've included all have a link to California, and I think the order I put them in creates a really cool, quick little 4-song mixtape. So my first song is from 1989's Mother's Milk by Red Hot Chili Peppers, and it's the song Magic Johnson, which is an ode to Magic Johnson and the LA Lakers, who were just a dominant team in the late 80s. Really fun, upbeat song. And the thing I really like about it is it creates the feeling of being at a basketball game. The rhythm of it, it feels like a basketball dribbling. So that's my number 1 song.
That's a great pick. I haven't heard that song in years. Wow.
Yeah, I'm a big Chili Peppers fan.
I didn't know that about you, Steve.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea.
They spoofed the Abbey Road cover.
That's right, they did.
With socks.
With socks.
But no, I love that Craig. That's a great pick.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Excellent.
So for my number 2 song, we go to a 2005 release from one of my favorite bands, the Dirt Bombs, which Jeff knows I've talked about a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a compilation album they put out called If You Don't Already Have a Look. And the song is I'm Saving Myself for Nichelle Nichols.
Oh, get out of here.
Yes. So it's pretty self-explanatory. It's a 57-second punk rock, garage rock sort of really fast song. And it's from the perspective of singer Mick Collins, basically saying that even though he hasn't been with her yet, he's still holding out hope that he'll one day be with Nichelle Nichols. And as we know, Nichelle Nichols was from Star Trek, which filmed in California. So there's our California connection.
Yeah, I wonder if Nichelle's ever heard that song.
I don't know. It's great, though. I mean, the Dirt Bombs is a band that they're probably the best live band I've ever seen. A very unique sound, 2 drummers, 2 bass players, and then lead singer and guitar player Mick Collins out of Detroit. Just like I said, it's, punk, garage rock type, and live they were one of the most unpredictable bands I've ever seen.
Yeah, I could be wrong about this, but I'm going to throw this out there. I have a faint memory many years ago of you saying you saw them live in a bowling alley?
Yeah, Asbury Lanes. I don't know if they still do shows, but they basically block off 4 or 5 lanes, put the band about a quarter way down, and just let them rip. And people are bowling around them.
Get out.
Yeah. Great show. Great venue, great show. I think they're still doing shows.
The Asbury Lanes. Was that?
That had to be like 2007 or 2008, probably.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I figured it was a while ago, but I have that memory in my head of you telling me that story.
Yeah, no, I saw them every time they came to Jersey. I saw them quite a few times at Maxwell's in Hoboken.
Ah, yeah, good place.
Before that place closed. And then my initial exposure to them was at, they opened for the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, who I went and saw in New York City. And, thank God I went to that show, because I probably never would have discovered the Dirt Bombs if I hadn't seen them on that show.
Yeah. Oh, and now our 2 mixes are connected, because one of the bands that's on my list I also saw live at Maxwell's in Hoboken.
Oh, very cool.
Go figure, huh? All right, what do you got for us next?
All right, from 1977, it's off of the Beach Boys' Love You album, and it's Johnny Carson.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the Beach Boys' Love You album is a really interesting album in the sense that Brian had been away from the band dealing with a lot of personal issues, demons, mental illness, and the Beach Boys' Love You started out sort of as a solo album just to get Brian sort of back into music and recording. It eventually developed into a full-fledged Beach Boys album. And Johnny Carson kind of came about as a fluke. I think they were talking about Johnny Carson and how much Brian liked him. And he said, I bet you I can write a song about Johnny. And 30 minutes later, he had it. It's a really fun song. And you know, I'm a big Beach Boys fan. If you haven't heard the Beach Boys' Love You album, it's really worth checking out because it might be one of Brian's most sort of, I don't know if childlike's the right word, but innocent productions. There's no posturing, and I love that about it.
That's great. I'm sure, Steve, you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I actually absolutely am. That's a great pick, Craig. I love that you went deep. A later Beach Boys. When I rediscovered the Beach Boys after Endless Summer, I don't know if you remember, that was a 2-disc LP compilation. It was kind of their greatest hits, and that got a ton of play, and that was a big, heavily played in my youth. When I went back and rediscovered them, I have all the albums now, so I'm familiar with Love You and the other later stuff. So I think I love that you went there. That's great.
Yeah. Well, I grew up with the Beach Boys too, so yeah, my uncle's favorite band.
Right on. So for my fourth song, I'm sure you're not going to have a hard time picking the artist, but from 1980s, end of the century, it is the Ramones' Danny Says. And this one's a little bit of a cheat because it references their manager at the time, Danny Fields, but the song's not entirely about him, but he's referenced enough, and it was written by Joey Ramone while they were recording the album, and they were staying in L.A. Joey wasn't a big fan of L.A., especially, being away from New York City. And they reference the room that they were staying in, which is kind of cool, room 100B at the Tropicana Motel. And it's just End of the Century is probably the most polarizing Ramones album. Danny Says is probably one of their prettiest songs, if you want to talk about that. It's a ballad, and if you haven't heard it, and you have a preconceived notion about what the Ramones sounded like, this one might surprise you a little bit. Joey Ramone was an amazing vocal talent, and I think this is one of his greatest vocals. You always heard the emotion in Joey's voice, and like I said, I'll fight every category to find a way to fit a Ramones song in, and this time it was easy, thankfully.
Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing how you wedge the Ramones in on future episodes, because I know you're going to try your hardest.
Especially that episode of No Ramones Songs.
Oh, that might be a tough one. He go the solo route.
He'll find a way.
Yeah.
That's great. So very cool. I have not heard that song myself, so I'm going to have to check that one out myself. Steve, are you a Ramones guy?
I am a Ramones guy, but not as thorough. So I don't know if I know that song. I guess I don't know it. I don't know if I remember it, but I imagine I heard it because I tend to get into a band and then go deep and try to get as much as I can. So
yeah, same
but
here.
I like the recommendation, though. I do really like the Ramones, so I love it already.
Yeah, all right. Well, great mix from Craig. And once again, everybody out there listening, we're going to run down our mixes again at the end of the show in a quick recap format. So don't worry if you didn't catch everything. You'll hear it again in a few minutes here. But I guess that just leaves me to do mine. And I am calling my mix Influences and Celebrations, which is kind of the theme for this. All the songs that are on my list are celebrations of influences on the artists that created the songs. So it was an interesting challenge for me. I started out with 9 possible tracks that just came off the top of my head within the first hour after I'd been thinking about the songs that I'd pick, and it was kind of tough to narrow it down. So I kind of went with my favorite 4 of those 9 songs. So it's not very scientific. It's just the 4 that I like the best out of the 9. So pretty much all of these songs are, let's say two are tributes. One is a celebration of an influence, and the other is an appreciation of a well-known philosopher. So all interesting things, different ways to approach this type of a topic. And I tried to arrange them in a way that I thought would have a solid flow and, kind of upbeat and downbeat songs kind of trading off between them so that you kind of have a wave of mood as you're listening through it. And just as Craig tries to wedge in the Ramones, I kind of try to wedge in epics, songs that are 10 minutes plus. So I did wind up getting one of those into this list. So apologies for anybody out there who doesn't want to invest that much time in listening to a mix. But one song is about 13 minutes long.
They'll save some time based on my mix. I think my mix is probably the shortest out of the three of us.
Oh, wow.
Rollover Beethoven's 8 minutes, so I'm
right.
challenging, but I'm not gonna take you down.
You're getting there, though. You're getting there. All right. Well, my track one is from the year 2000. And I am bringing this band up yet again, as I did on our first episode, 4 from a Favorite. This was the band that I chose as my favorite band that I wanted to create a mix from, and it's The Clientele. And it's a song called Joseph Cornell, and it is about an American artist and a filmmaker born in New York. Strangely enough, they're a British band, singing about an American artist. He was a pioneer of an art form called assemblage, which is similar to making collages. It's like a two-dimensional type thing, and it typically use found objects and kind of layer them in almost like a shadow box type format. So he was influenced a lot by surrealism, and was also an experimental avant-garde filmmaker. So the album that this song is on, Suburban Light, as I said on my first episode of MixTape Challenge, it kind of changed my musical direction back in 2000-ish. I'd been a bit stagnant discovering new music, and I heard a track from that album on college radio and just immediately ordered the album, and it kicked off this huge new era of musical discovery for me. I owe a lot to that album, and a lot of what I'm listening to today is thanks to that random discovery. So I felt that I really wanted to include a song by The Clientele, and they made it easy for me because obviously this song fits the bill completely. So the song itself has a really raw and unpolished sound. It's got heavy reverb on the vocals that give it kind of an almost haunting quality as they sing. It's not completely word for word about Joseph Cornell, but it's definitely a representation of his art in lyric form. It's very layered, very interesting, very deep, but also very short. So overall, short but solid track. I'm not sure if either one of you guys listen to The Clientele at all.
Only what I've been exposed to through you, Jeff, but I love the description there where you talk about how lyrically it sort of captured the feel of what the man was about. That's very cool and very creative.
Yeah, same for me. I'm not familiar with the song, but your approach to your playlist and delivery was fantastic. I'm looking at my list. I'm going, gee whiz, Captain Lou Albano?
Hey, Captain Lou is a great pick, man. Don't count yourself out. All right. Well, this next song, I know my first pick was a little more obscure, but this next song is a pretty popular song from a popular album from a very popular artist. And this is where I thought Steve and I might have an overlap, but then I know Steve likes to go for the deep cuts, so I wasn't too scared. From the year 1970, this is by the wonderful and amazing George Harrison from the album All Things Must Pass. One of my favorite tracks on this album, The Ballad of Sir Frankie Crisp. So, Frankie Crisp was an English lawyer and a microscope enthusiast. So he was an enthusiastic member of something called the Royal Microscopical Society, very much into philanthropy, donating furniture, books, instruments, and things to these societies. And he was given the title of Sir. And obviously this song was written as a tribute to him. I think this, I don't want to go into the subject of the entire album, but and I'm sure Steve has an opinion on this, but I think this is up there with some of the greatest solo Beatles albums that have ever been made. George just exploded with this record after the Beatles broke up, and I've always really loved this song. I have the piano and the guitar kind of playing off of each other. It's kind of soothing. The vibe is nice and mellow. The way George sings it is kind of inspiring. It's one of my very favorite songs amongst many, many incredible tracks on the album All Things Must Pass. So I had to include it here. Like my previous track, this one also has quite echoey, dreamy sound with a rather kind of abstract lyrics that can give you something to think about. You can kind of analyze what he's trying to say and what you think he means. And I also think it's interesting that he mentions the name of John and Paul in this song as they're sweeping the stern. So again, another one of my faves that happens to be written about a real person. Steve, any thoughts on All Things Must Pass?
I love All Things Must Pass. It's funny for these kind of things. I'm 100% Beatles, so I force myself not to go there. It's just too easy. But no, I love that. That's a great pick. When you started saying the album, going, which one is it? My Sweet Lord? That's a person.
It's true. I could have gone My Sweet Lord.
But no, it's great. It's really, really great.
Oh, thanks. Craig, you're familiar with that album, right? I'm sure you are.
Oh yeah, it's a masterpiece, and this is a connection you referenced, right? Because that was produced by Phil Spector.
Yep.
And Phil Spector produced End of the Century by the Ramones.
Oh, there you go. Look at that. We're so intertwined, you guys. This is great stuff. All right, let's see. Track 3 is another very popular one. This is going to be kind of more of an obvious pick, but I've always loved this song since I was a little kid, and I remember not knowing who he was talking about until I got a little bit older and got a little more musically diverse and educated. So it is from the year 1976, from the album Songs in the Key of Life. This is Stevie Wonder's Sir Duke, which is obviously about Duke Ellington. And he, I'm sure everybody knows who Duke Ellington is. I don't have to go too deep into his background, but he was a very celebrated American composer, pianist, and the leader of his jazz orchestra, which I didn't realize he led from 1923 until the time that he passed. So he was doing that for more than 50 years. Not a lot of artists stay with their respective groups for that length of time. So that's pretty amazing. And I've heard a lot of people doing tributes to Duke Ellington. My grandparents loved Duke Ellington. So I thought this was an appropriate song to keep into my list. It's a pretty popular track, so I don't really have to say all that much about it, I don't think. But definitely Stevie in the heights of his 70s funk jazz with an amazing killer beat, fantastic horns, and some really, really nice tight bass. So always fun song to listen to. I've loved this song for a lot of years. You can really tell when you listen to the lyrics how much Stevie loves singing about his influences here. It's joyous, it's upbeat, and proud to put this song on my list. So I'm sure both of you guys know this song.
It's one of the most memorable, riffs of that era, I would say.
Yeah, it's stuck in my head now.
Earworm.
But I like that. I always like when artists celebrate their influences and introduce them, directly, indirectly to their fans. I would like to believe that people didn't know who that was and then discovered who he was based on this song.
Yeah, like I said, when I was little, I didn't know who Sir Duke was. It was only until I probably got into my teenage years and started to really dig into more music that I understood what the song was about. So it definitely led me to Duke Ellington in a way. So awesome stuff. All right, well, I guess that makes it time for my final pick. Kind of going deeper into the catalog for this one, and this is from the year 1981, from an album called Live Indian Summer by Al Stewart, and the track is called Nostradamus. So obviously this is about the famous philosopher Nostradamus, so I think he requires no introduction at this point. But the thing I really like about this song is that the lyrics are all wrapped around Nostradamus's predictions. So Al Stewart pretty much took a lot of Nostradamus's famous predictions and created a song out of it. And you guys know how much I like epic tracks, and this one, like I said, weighs in at just over 13 minutes, and it's live. as well. So I've been an Al Stewart fan since I was a kid. My first intro to his work was the amazing Time Passages album produced by Alan Parsons. Spectacular stuff. I still remember sitting in my uncle's room, and I'm going to probably get crap from people for mentioning my uncle again because I mention him all the time. But I was sitting in his room with these giant Heathkit headphones on my head, listening to the original master recording of that album and just being blown away. So this is from a live show from 1981, and it's an absolutely killer performance. I'm always impressed by bands that can pull off these long tracks live, especially ones that have so many different movements and changes as the song goes on. It's almost like 3 or 4 songs in one kind of chained together. But as most epics do, like I said, it goes through several different movements and changes, and he kind of changes up the style a few different times, but it always stays true to being about the various predictions that Nostradamus had made. And interesting part about why I picked the live version is in this one, they actually weave in another Al Stewart song in the middle of this. They weave in a song called The World Goes to Riyadh, and it just fits in so perfectly. Like, if you weren't familiar with the song, you wouldn't think that was a second song mixed into the middle. It's really, really cool the way they do it. So a lot of fun. But this, like I said, this might not be up everyone's alley, but if you're in the market for some great historic rock, you can never go wrong with Al Stewart. So, Steve, judging by your reactions, you're familiar with this one?
I'm not. I'm intrigued though, because I just like the topic. Yeah, I'm an Al Stewart fan, certainly not deep like I know you are, but I'm intrigued by a 13-minute Nostradamus track. I don't remember how many others of those I have in my collection, but no, it's good and live to boot. So
yeah, and it's listening to it. It's amazing to me that these guys are so good at their craft that they can pull a live track that long and pull off all the changes and not flub up a single thing, and it just sounds phenomenal. I don't know, Craig, have you listened to a lot of Al Stewart, or that's not really up your alley?
Again, it's probably just whatever I listened to when I was hanging out with you and just listening to music. But I've liked everything I've heard, and I'm very interested in hearing this track. And Steve, you might want to, if you're interested in going down the Nostradamus rabbit hole, Judas Priest a couple of years ago put out a whole album, a concept album about Nostradamus.
Wow. I did not know that.
I did not know that either. I'm making a note.
Wow. We all learned something tonight. Well, and that's actually what the Mixtape Challenge is all about, everybody. It is about discovering new music. So hopefully we've introduced some of you or given you some ideas of new things you may want to check out and listen to and expand your musical horizons in your library. So before we close up the show, we're going to quickly recap our lists so you can get a quick rundown of what everybody picked in their list. So Steve, you went first, so why don't you recap us on your 4 songs?
Sure. Michael Caine by Madness was number 1. King Tut by Steve Martin, number 2. Captain Lou by NRBQ from the album Lou and the Q. And track 4, Bring It Home, is Roland Beethoven Electric Light Orchestra from their album ELO 2.
Very, very cool. Mr. Craig Cohen, your 4 tracks?
Okay, it starts with Magic Johnson by Red Hot Chili Peppers. The second song is I'm Saving Myself for Nichelle Nichols by the Dirt Bombs. Track 3 is Johnny Carson by the Beach Boys. And we round it out with Danny Says by the Ramones.
Very, very cool. And my list is track 1 is Joseph Cornell by the Clientele. Track 2 is The Ballad of Sir Frankie Crisp by George Harrison. Track 3 is Sir Duke by the awesome Stevie Wonder. And track 4 is Nostradamus, the live version by Al Stewart. So, if you are curious about any of this music, of course, you can search for it online, or an even easier way is to go to mixtapechallenge.com, click on this episode, which will be episode 5 of a Mixtape Challenge, and there will be links to all of these songs for Apple Music and for Spotify where available. Sometimes the songs aren't on both. So we will have links to all of them there for you. And you can follow us online at facebook.com/the Mixtape Challenge and on Twitter at 4songmixtape. So feel free to weigh in on our mixes. Let us know who you think had the best mix, and we will chat back with you and talk through all of this stuff. So we look forward to hearing from all of you out there. Thanks again for being Mixtape Challenge listeners. I saw the Facebook has been gaining some activity lately. People are checking it out. So looking forward to any new listeners out there. Looking forward to talking to you. And all of us are floating around on social media somewhere. Steve, where can people find you if they want to chat music?
To chat music. Interesting.
Or time travel. Or paradoxes.
Well, there's music and time travel. There's always songs about time travel. So just go check out paradoxparkway.com and visit me there. And a quick commercial from Michael Caine. If you haven't seen it, YouTube the clip from the movie The Trip with Rob Brydon and Steve Coogan doing dueling Michael Caine impersonations. It's terrific.
Oh, I gotta check that out. That sounds great. Craig Cohen, where can people find you on the social medias?
Easiest way to find me is on Twitter at Mr. Craig Cohen. That's Mr. with an MR. I like to tweet a lot, and I also have a link to my Ramones fan page in my profile there at Twitter, so you can go over and check out my Ramones page called Pinhead. And I pretty much do this day in Ramones history and some other good stuff. I recently interviewed C.J. Ramone, who was the replacement bass player for Dee Dee, and you can find that interview there. A lot of cool stuff, and it's great. Just helping keep the memory of the Ramones alive now that all four of the original guys are no longer with us.
Very noble cause. Very noble cause. Sounds great. So, if you're looking for me, you can tweet at 4songmixtape, and I'll be glad to get back to you. I'm also Warp Factor Jeff on Twitter. Well, that's a Star Trek reference, but still, that's me. And I'd be happy to chat with anybody about anything. So, looking forward to hearing from you guys. So that brings us to the end of episode 5 of Mixtape Challenge. This is the beginning of our second season, so looking forward to a lot more episodes coming up. We're going to be trying to get them to you on about a 3-week cadence, so keep your eyes out a few weeks from now for the next Mixtape Challenge to drop. So thank you to both of our contestants here today. Steve Sikoryak, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Jeff. Good talking with you, Craig. And Jeff, really, thanks for setting this up again. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, thanks for being so enthusiastic about coming back on. It was inspiring. And thank you, Mr. Cohen, for coming back on the show. Always a blast to podcast with you. People may not know who listen to the show that we've been podcasting together for, 6-7 years now.
Yeah, I mentioned that 80 episode run of Camel Clutch Cinema, and you and me together, we did, I don't know if it was uninterrupted or not, Jeff, but we did, we covered all 80 episodes of the original Star Trek.
That was uninterrupted. That was weekly uninterrupted.
Yeah, so anybody who podcasts will appreciate what a feat that is. And on your end, Jeff, it's even more impressive because in addition to doing all the prep work, you were doing the editing and production for it. And all I had to do was sit down and watch an episode and chat about it with you. So it's another body of work that I'm really, really, really proud of. And I treasure those episodes we did together.
Yeah, as do I. It's and all of them are out there. You can find them. There's the tricorder transmissions. You can check out all of those. And we went on after those 80 and did quite a few more. The animated series and some of the comic books and things from the 60s. So we got quite a and plus we did all those supplemental logs as well in between some of those. So we did a lot in a couple year time frame. But yeah, great stuff. And I'm sure both of you will come back again to the Mixtape Challenge sometime in the future.
Sure.
All right.
I'm always game, Jeff. I relish the idea of trying to find a way to fit the Ramones into any kind of challenge. So bring it.
All right. Well, you will get that challenge once again. So, all right, guys, thanks so much for being here. And thanks, everybody, for listening to Mixtape Challenge. We'll be back in a few weeks. See you then.